Hey guys, welcome back to my Schaublin adventure with the 102N-VM. As some of you saw in my last video, I bought this NVM at an auction in Belgium and it was very dirty, but otherwise it looked to be in good condition, but it needed a good cleaning. As you can see, it's all grease, but luckily with some degreaser, I'm using the Dutch Dasty, it was quite good to clean everything. And this is how the motor housing looked, so that also needed a good cleaning. But I wanted to have it running, and that was my priority. And if somebody saw the last video, then you have seen there was no connector on it and there was this label. And after that I did some research, and as you can see, maybe read some French on the label, the power needs to be according to 220 volts, and also inside the machine was this label that there was a transformer from 380 3-phase to 220. And maybe you can see it, there were also some wires that were not original. And there was a travo fuse. So normally here in the Netherlands, the 3-phase is 380 volts or 400 volts between the phases and 230 between one phase and zero. But it turns out in Belgium there's an old system also where it is 120 volts between one phase and neutral and 220 between the phases. So I got a little bit scared and didn't want to hook up the machine to my 3-phase 380, and I pulled the motor and thought I needed to rewire it, but as I pulled the motor I saw that the motor was original and still 3-phase. So I started digging inside the machine. Also find this nice fuse adapter. That's one way to repair an old fuse. But it turns out there was a travo transformer inside the machine, and I thought, okay, I probably can pull that out and then have it connected the original way and then have it running it again. So I put in a new circuit breaker and reconnected the wires, but it didn't run and I had to figure out why. Turns out that it also needed 220 single phase, and I needed to connect the neutral because there were some relays and the relays were switching on the 3-phase power of the motor. So finally I got the motor running and I cleaned up all the wires in the cabinet and put it back together. And then it was time for a good cleaning. So using the Dasty I cleaned the cabinet on the inside. Of course that takes a while, and also cleaned the motor. I didn't want to disconnect it, so I cleaned it here on the spot, but that was alright. Took out some nuts and bolts, but otherwise it was good enough to clean it the way it is right now. And then it was time to clean all the parts that were on the inside. So videos like this, I'm not making them just for YouTube, but also for myself, because I want to remember how all the parts come together. And maybe if somebody of you have the same machine and also want to know how it's fit together. Of course there are drawings in the manual, but pictures or video is always better. So time for some good cleaning. So the Dasty that I'm using is quite nasty. It's a strong degreaser, and I learned quite fast that I should need gloves for this job. Also, you want to have it cleaned with water afterwards, and after the water, of course, put a light layer of oil or something to prevent it from rusting. So, as you can see, all parts are really nice and clean and ready to put back together. So I put some light oil on there and put everything back together. So it was time to put everything back in the machine, but the motor is quite heavy and I thought, how can I do that safely without hurting myself or damaging some parts? And what I did is I put a strap on the motor and then take it the correct distance and just swiveled it in, and as you can see, that went quite nicely without any damage or strength from my side. Holding it up with one hand, the other one, the strap takes the weight of the motor, and then I just could put one bolt in and then swivel it a little bit to the other side and put the other bolt in. And that worked great. So that's a tip if you ever want to remove or reinstall the motor on the Schaublin. And when you mount it, make sure you align the V-belt drive system, because there's quite some movement inside. You can shift it on the shaft left to right, but also, as you can see, tilt the motor on his mounting points, and you definitely want to make sure you align that with the V-belt. So I got everything back in and nice and clean as I like it. I don't need a complete restored machine, but I do want a clean machine. So I learned also that there's one other point that is very important if you mount it back together, and I want to share it. The oil system is based on just one lubrication point on this shaft, and you can see the flat point on one side, there's a hole also in there, and on the other side there's also this hole. And if you do not mount it in the correct position, and that takes quite that's quite precisely a few millimeters off, and then the hole is sticking out on one side or the other side, and then all oil is just flushed outside without lubricating the shafts as it should be. So make sure you have it on the correct position and check if these holes are poking out or if it's inside the shaft as it should be. So it's finally time to see and hear the machine running. Everything sounds good, but the power feed and the gearbox is stuck, and that doesn't sound really good. It's not engaging on the gears. Try different direction. Alright,